Out here. Thank you. It will help me a little bit here. So what we've been talking about is this first focusing on aging, because of course Jim and I were at a very specific thing. We've now, I think, transmitted the reality that aging at its best is an opportunity rather than simply a limitation, rather than losses, rather than deficiencies, rather than really with practice, training, intention. What else would you add? Commitment. Aging simply becomes the background, maybe you could say, or the Buddha would certainly say maybe something like conditions. The conditions now, we might say, in which wisdom, love, and compassion among the infinite other bodhisattva qualities can be realized. I think I'm going to hang on to that word because we're going to head in that direction. Can be realized. We have a tendency, then, we've also said in our culture, not to diminish these conditions called aging at whatever age and stage you are as some kind of deficiency, insufficiency, weakening, lessening, and in fact, the Buddha, as well as all traditions, right? We wouldn't have to point to Buddhism in any way, says no, just one more precious opportunity to realize. But we don't realize first, do we? And it wouldn't be reasonable, it wouldn't be fair, it'd be bypassing, which we're going to talk a little about today, to imagine that somehow you should just be it, right? It wouldn't be reasonable. And in fact, the teachings say, and I was trying to review this a little bit on Saturday, that you could begin with any quality. We've been focusing now for 90 something days. We're coming into our final week. I think we're at 94 maybe today. Uh, we must then, and we're going to review the Eightfold Path coming up because of this, but we must see a possibility. And it isn't a possibility in the other, it's a possibility in oneself, isn't it? As a way of then intentioning, efforting, practicing every day, because otherwise we forget, then becoming a way of embodying, cultivating. These are all the words we're using from cultivation. Then we could say, right, uh, becoming, and from the becoming, which the Buddha, by the way, sees as a dangerous because we get solid and static in that becoming. I am this, I am not this. We all know where the traps are there, I believe, right? But this becoming is simply seeing evidence for possibility and then growing, cultivating that, embodying, being present, and then what? Realizing. But we're going to talk about the practice today. And the Buddha said without the practice, as well as without the intention, right? First, without the practice, there's little chance. There's little chance to realize anything other than, what did he say? Anybody know? Other than what?
That they're suffering.
Suffering. That what you're practicing, if you're not intentionally setting time, mind, heart, body aside for this work continuously, then, not just practice on a cushion, but practice in every moment. We're going to shift our pebble this week from quality to what am I practicing? this moment? What am I actually practicing this moment? Not what's my intention, not what's my larger aspiration for quality, but what is in fact am I practicing? And we're going to ask that with our pebble now that we're picking one each day to recollect. Am I practicing the patience that I had set the heart mind on? Am I practicing? And how am I practicing? And then for me today, a little why am I practicing? Because the Buddha, I'll tell the Heartwood story briefly. But the Buddha said, sometimes we practice for the look. Sometimes we practice for the adornment. Sometimes we practice for fame or reputation. Sometimes we practice to feel better. And that all of these methods, all of this keeps us from, in fact, the heartwood, which is the center of the tree, not the bark, right? Not the leaf, not the twig, not the root only, but the heartwood, the essence of the tree. Someone might say the kernel, the heart, right, of something that is ultimately what we are cultivating and transforming. And then with behaviors and practices and right, all of that potential. But that the heartwood, the Buddha said itself, is most important. And you can see the truth of that, I hope, right? It wouldn't, how it looks then is fairly irrelevant. Who likes it then becomes fairly irrelevant. What your family thinks about it, irrelevant to the heartwood, which is what is its true intention and then result, right? Not because we don't love our families, but because ultimately any opinion, including one's own, in liking or not liking, right, would certainly not be the point. Would not be the point, right? We get this idea. So there's a couple stories that have come to mind. The Heartwood was one, the Heartwood story. I want us to hang on to that because what am I practicing this moment? And how then is it impacting that Heartwood? What am I cultivating right now with how I am speaking, thinking, acting, contributing, not contributing, setting boundary, right? Whatever it is we're doing. And so I wrote a couple very short points, and I want to look at those with you first before we practice. I wrote, and I'm very shocked I wrote it, but I wrote, prayer changes the one who prays. And I want to just sit with that. That was the first words as I was thinking about practice. Prayer changes the one who prays. And what does that mean for you? Because that gets us to the heartwood, doesn't it?
Well, I always think of praying for others. When you pray for others, right, you're cultivating more kindness, compassion, and it changes you as well as the wish for good things for others.
Could everybody hear Libby? She said often prayer is a request, a beseeching, a seeking, an asking, uh, but even in that, nothing, and I do not mean in any way to be judgmental of that, in that, what is often also, if not more so, changing is who? The heart of you, the one who sees suffering and wishes for its end, is the bodhisattva, isn't it? The prayer. And we often pray with this idea of the prayer moving outward, and it is not incorrect. So I don't want to fault the wish for others' well being also. But the truth about the prayer is it changes more than anything the one who is praying. What else does this mean for you? Can somebody, would be Carrie, if Carrie's here, I don't know. Is Carrie on?
Yes, I am.
Could you read chat for me, Carrie? Because I can't
Yep,
see it when I'm looking at my notes.
nothing in chat yet. I can tell you what happens when I'm at work and I have a patient who's dying, and a family asks. It's one of my go-to on my mental checklist when somebody transitions to the point where they could be dying within 24 hours or a week. I always say, is there somebody religious, or can I have a chaplain come? And we usually have a chaplain in house, but this past week our chaplains have been on vacation or blah blah blah, and so it's been particularly difficult to get a chaplain. And I've come over the weekend, Fourth of July. I became best friends with the chaplain from La Jolla because I had to call her like five different times. And one of my patients died before she could get there, and she says, that's actually the best time for us to be together. And I said, interesting. And I said, why is that? She says, because then everybody's quiet, including the patient. And I said, okay, that's great. And she says, my words mean a little bit more after somebody dies. And so I went in the room with her and I listened, prayed with the family. I'd
Yeah,
been with them for about 5 or 6 hours, so I got to know them pretty well. So
yeah.
for me, it's the actual words and what I makes me cry, just the tenderness of people holding hands and saying the words together.
Hmm. And they're simple.
Yeah,
It is in the being together, isn't it?
yeah.
And the words really become not quite,
Irrelevant.
yeah,
Yeah,
as she said, not quite the point. The togetherness becomes the point. And before we can be together, what's required? We have to be with ourselves more,
present.
don't we? To see what is of benefit, what, and to recognize that how whatever appears to be external or outside is never so, is never so, is it?
Nope.
Whatever appears to be the problem over there is not possible. It doesn't mean that the highest good is occurring either, because we are essentially, as human beings, a solid work in progress, aren't we? But I don't want us believing that the Bodhisattva's task is something over there in any way separate from the truth of our own suffering, right? The truth of our own confusion, as well as the truth of our own capacity. And isn't that encouraging? And we often get sided, don't we? One or the other. And so the Buddha said, well, I know this to be true. I know one's own steadiness, stability of mind, open and radiant heart is our capacity, but also requiring some training. And so he cultivated a few um, practices. One of them would be the Brahma Viharas, the loving kindness practice, compassion practices, practices of joyful effort in behalf of not only oneself but others, and equanimity. He said these would be good basics, and they themselves, in the training as we pray, will what transform you just by the very doing of them. This is then confused, I would say, by people doing metta or loving kindness practice for years, going, I am not any less hateful than I was yesterday. And it is not true. It is not true. And it may also be true you still get angry. And in fact, let's say it's likely, right? And then people say, what? It isn't working. It is working. It's just working in its time, in its way, from the heartwood out. it doesn't mean we see its evidence. And I don't know if Denise Funfar is on today. She may not be. I know she might be traveling. Is she here by chance? Denise
No.
said, so is public. Denise said on Saturday, there I was in a situation with an opportunity, and I just didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do. Everything I've tried isn't working. The difficult situation remains difficult. And then we remember what? It isn't about what's changing out there that is its point. It is what's changing within, and recognizing one's own despair would be a point, right? And then being with oneself in it. And I said, oh, yes, young goddess dilemma. Knowing the possibility and not yet being able to live it. Haven't we? We go, I know there's another way. I'm just not there yet. I haven't, right? The practice is there. It's in me. I might even have ideas. I just can't realize yet. Well, that would be correct because we spend lifetimes in that training, recognizing, right? All of these things we continue to talk about. We're going to go back over the Noble Eightfold Path one at a time so that we can remember the internal work that ultimately finds its way into expression, manifested, co-created. We could use all these words, and of benefit, right? Even when you're pretty sure nothing good happened there. It doesn't even make it true. Even when the same thing appears to have occurred, both for you and the other potentially. Doesn't actually mean it's true because drop by drop, says the Buddha, the world is changed. Drop by drop. We are often not going to see the fruit, didn't we talk about last week? We will maybe never see the fruit drop or be fully nourished ourselves by that sweetness, but in the understanding that it will occur, that these are the natural laws. One leads to the other, which leads to the other, which then becomes the gift, the giver, and the receiver, which is in fact us and all others. Us and all others. So I just want to be clear about that. The practice is for you first. Its impact will occur over time in infinite, often invisible ways. Often invisible ways. And so we have to be watchful of becoming discouraged and checking ourselves with, well, I was practicing this to get to that. Or I was practicing this kindness to get somebody else to be kind, right? It is true that as we are, so others become, is true. But I don't know if it's on the spot. I don't have good evidence for that. If I'm good to you, it'd be good. Not necessarily, and the right thing, and nurturing the right. So we all. And so we were asking, who am I becoming? And who benefits from who and how I am becoming? And we're careful not to cement the who or the I in the becoming, but rather a continuous wave, if we could think of it in this way, a flow of continuous possibility, capability, skill building, right? Quality, internal quality building, not what has been accomplished. And we have a tendency in our productive oriented, right, culture to go, well, what did it get you? And often what I've noticed, and I can speak to this personally, I didn't get what I wanted. I will tell you folks that it did not occur. I did not get what I wanted because what I wanted had something to do with that small me that wanted it my way. In fact, is anybody reading The Aging as a Spiritual Practice by chance? Only because I want to check in on the next story I'm going to tell. Anybody? I didn't ask you to do it, so there is no. Don't worry. But in the chapter I was looking at, um, there was a story about a Russian hermit, and I'm going to see if I can't recollect it. The Russian hermit, and I heard it was an old Russian Orthodox Christian story originally, but this is the story. A small village had made a decision to build a grand cathedral, which is pretty impressive.
Small village.
A small village. And people became very committed to this enterprise, and they donated monies, they cut down their own timber, they quarried their stone on their lands, brought it to the place where the cathedral was built. There was a lot of effort, many, many years of effort. And eventually, over time, between the money, the labor, the donations, and the commitment, the cathedral was built. And the church, of course, became the biggest pride of the village, right? And so they were pointing to, right? People would go in and say, "My God, what an amazing thing you have constructed, being such a small village," and was highly admired. Uh, Many thousands of people passing through. And then many years later, this is the part of the story I love. Someone asked one of the elder monks who lived on the property, uh, "What do you think has contributed to the beauty, the majesty of this cathedral?" And he said, "Oh, it's the old hermit who lives beneath the church." And the visitor said, "Beneath the church?" The monk replied, it says, "No one sees him. He asks for nothing. He never preaches. He simply prays. The whole church rests upon the faithfulness of this one hidden life." The visible beauty, then, of the church rests on what? The intention and the prayer, we'll use that word, of an unseen foundation. Unseen, not recognized by anyone, but no less, in fact, the heart would. We could say again, couldn't we? Another example. The heart would is that which is done every day, recollected often, repeated, you've heard me say ad nauseum, right? And done with one's wholeheartedness. This then makes all the difference. The beauty of the cathedral, said the monk, was that. Not the windows, not the pews, not the crucifix, but the faithful practice, one could say, right? And so that it was a very striking story for me. And I'm going to stay in storytelling today, I think, a little bit, because I think we often get something deep from its offer. And so then, does anybody know the third story? And then we'll practice. Does anybody know the story of the two wolves? Anybody ever heard it? It's I think a Navajo uh, story, and it is an old story. I won't do it justice, but I'll tell it as best I can. There's a grandfather and grandchild, and they're walking together, and the grandchild sees, I believe, two wolves, and there's about to be, I believe, some kind of interaction between these wolves. And the grandchild is saying to the grandfather, "Who wins? Who wins?" And the grandfather says, "The one that you feed." one that you feed, right? And the wolves then become, in that story, the symbol of what is good and what is habitual, right? What is good and what is habitual, not bad. And what grows, what becomes stronger, what becomes most present and prominent is the one that you feed. And then our everyday lives, don't they, become just that. Whatever it is, we have with intention, with commitment, with um, constancy, with steadfastness. Then we see the value of all those words. It isn't only then, is it what goes out from it? It is what is cultivated within from it, right first, which is why we're carrying the stone as the reminder. What I'm holding, what I'm speaking, what I'm saying, what I'm practicing ultimately becomes my faithful practice, doesn't it?
Because my neurons are firing that the whole
Yes,
time I'm practicing.
whole time, aren't they? Whatever it looks like, whatever it's looking like, maybe less so, but what we're feeding is what we become, and what we become is what we are cultivating and then ultimately contributing, intended or no, right? What we embody is always more important, which is why the Philadelphia rally last week was so important to me, because it was like, oh no, that we are growing something larger than serving a meal one Thursday a month. We are growing that capacity for, I will be there, I will show up, it will be inconvenient, I won't be able to do it maybe the way I most like it, it may not have a presentation I would prefer, I didn't have time to make the thing I think I most enjoy. It's none, and then we go, that's right, none of this, says the Buddha, is as relevant as the heart that wishes for the well-being. Isn't it true? And then we're going to hold the pebble question for ourselves this week, this one thing, not who am I becoming, because there is ultimately no one who in the Whoville, right? It is, what am I practicing this moment? This is the essence of Bhavana, then. Bhavana is, I've mentioned it many times, it's rarely talked about in our Western culture because it is, in fact, the slow cultivation, the drop by drop, moment by moment cultivation of what? Who we are, what we value, how we live, what we practice, then broken down moment by moment. And can we be the faithful hermit without, maybe not getting the recognition? Not probably, I would say. I think that was maybe part of our struggle with Philadelphia, honestly, is I don't think we were quite getting the acknowledgement we thought we should get because we had already been doing this for some amount of time. I think that was at the surface. I think at the deeper level, however, we saw ourselves, and correctly, as deep contributors in a way that wasn't being recognized because they didn't know who we were. And so when someone applies efforts and practices and commitment and refinement, even look at how we've gotten better and better at it, and then it just looks like we're all starting without that. We feel misaligned, like, wait, something We're not in the same space. And I think it has not taken so long, has it? It has not taken so long. Let's say 5 or 6 weeks for that commitment, that refinement, that uh, way of doing it to reveal itself, right? Even in that small way. I don't think it always occurs at all either. I think someone may never really know, right? It's possible. May never really see. Um, my mother, who I adore, said to me afterwards, after Sangha on Saturday, oh, they really like your talking. And I said, yeah, probably not that much, actually. But they like the possibilities that I'm talking about. They like, yes, I think there's something there, Mom. I agree. She goes, yeah, because they got so quiet at one point, and I thought that was pretty amazing. Um, and remember what you could see, right? That's it. What you could see. What you cannot see, then we'll go back to our one of our other teachings, is the transmission. You cannot see it, right? It isn't a tangible, because then it worked, and then right at all. And so for the viewer, it looks like, oh, they like your talks. They like your talking. Not even slightly the point. And the real answer is no, Mom. They like remembering, is probably true. The heartwood that is them and that is us. And then in the remembering, the commitment that gets revived, right? Re-enlivened. And so I'm going to stop there. Bhavana, essential practice. What are we cultivating? What are we practicing this moment? How do we measure it? Be watchful, because you frequently will not get what you wanted in the training, in the practice. Oh, and by the way, in the being, it does, like, this is not working. Yes, 100%, because the one who is enlivening, living the prayer is transformed, even if you get no evidence for its truth. And I love the truth of this, and I want us to remember it, because I think we can get frustrated, and I think we can keep ourselves from daily practice, because I hear a lot, well, what is it really getting me? I just sit there, and then I get frustrated, and then I notice my thoughts, and then I think I could be doing something productive. What am I sitting here for? Because you're cultivating something that is deep within the heartwood and invisible, and it is greater than all the doing. In fact, it would be better to invest more in this, right? Any thoughts about this before we have the two wolves? I like the story, the heartwood, and I love the idea of carrying the pebble with this week, the simple question: what am I practicing this moment?
Yeah, I have a question for practitioners, let's say, who aren't going to just believe the teacher. Or would you say that's what's required? Because when I already know what you're saying is true from practice, but I see where in those moments where you wholeheartedly believe that the practice is not transforming you, and you're telling
It's not the point.
Right.
It's the result.
It's the result. So I guess then what do you say to people who they are practicing to be a better person, but have aspects change, so become less angry, have more self-love. That is part of the intention of their practice, right? So when we don't see that, what as a teacher, how do you keep practicing other than, again, say, well, how do you know that's true? How do you know it's true that if you just keep practicing through that time where you see nothing going on, nothing's improving,
Or it looks worse.
yeah, I'm still
Yeah.
getting angry every time that happens.
Yes.
Why should I believe you?
Yeah. So the Buddha said, because why continue? Because the anger is a moment, and if you can then use that very moment in order to practice the thing you've been setting your intention for, like metta, as an example, it will transform itself. Even in the moments you miss it, like we all do, something else is still growing. It just isn't in its evidence yet. Like Jean just said, the neurons are firing in a completely different way. The heart isn't as contracted. If we can remember that this moment too, right, is practice, number one. And then the Buddha said, yes, never believe me. Look at your own life. And so, look, yes, you aren't getting what you wanted in the time you wanted, in the way you wanted. It has nothing to do with what's being grown. And people who are results oriented know this by virtue of something like weightlifting. You are not necessarily stronger the day you lift weights. In fact, if anything, you're fatigued and weaker. But that doesn't mean that at its heartwood, something greater is not being cultivated. And so sometimes those kinds of understandings can help, right? That the tree is growing fruit even when it is not yet bearing fruit, that its potential is already alive. And then the third thing I'd say is be it simply rather than talk about it. Then just, yes, I know this. I know the frustration of this. I know the difficulty of this. And I also know the other side, which is then one day you see not quite as harsh, not quite as angry, not quite as self loathing. And maybe for just a moment. But we all look for the result. What comes well before it for the longest time is that other practice, training, cultivation, becoming. And we often are not seeing because we want what we want, right? And that is a quality of a certain greed in us, is that it should get us something tangible. It is, and it is like the faithful hermit. It's not always in clear evidence, even to us, is it? Even to us. And then we become discouraged, and then, but that's okay. Can I hold my own discouragement? Like, when does it get better? Yeah, right now. Right now, by just recognizing I want something else, I want it in a different time frame, and I'm somewhat impatient, frustrated, or self-loathing about it. Well, this would be genius. And then what can I do with that becomes the second. What can I do with that reality? I can hold myself lovingly in the arms of compassion, recognizing I just want what I want. And I don't yet even know how to quite get it or be it, or and that's just skillful too. It's, yeah, not yet, not in the way I most want, and it's all okay, isn't it? Then we don't have to be frustrated with the practice, the teacher, the teachings, or ourselves in it. We say, yes, it is growing something right now, even though it doesn't feel good, because not all real training, right. And so starting this Saturday, just so you know, as we get ready to practice, we're going to start a little review of the Noble Eightfold Path. Because
I'd like to,
what
I'd
is,
like,
yes,
I'd like to just share briefly.
yeah,
This last Sunday, um, I hadn't gone to a Quaker Friends meeting down in La Jolla, and I was kind of beating up on myself, saying, "Oh, I'm not showing up. I'm not showing up." And I thought, Whoa, well, I'll still be, a loving, accepted friend because I've been doing our Sangha, been going to Unity, and I thought, whew. So I went to La Jolla, and La Jolla on Sunday was impacted. I mean, I just to find a parking space down there was just incredible. But I finally got into a meeting, and I realized, from the silence and everything, all's well. I was still accepted and 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 still loved just for who I am. And and it was refreshing for my soul just to show up and be there
And
after.
remember, Dennis, that your goodness is not based on any one thing. It's based on the infinite things, most of which you probably can't see.
Yeah, exactly.
And showing up to friends meeting is a lovely way to nurture that, no doubt, like attending Sangha. And alone is still not sufficient, is it? We have to, that love, self care, that, oh, all is well here. By the way, all is well here, even when no one else sees it, right? And maybe they didn't. You might be a part of a group one day that goes, hey, this is what are you doing? You're supposed to be here every week, or what? And the truth is, that may not be the practice that moment for any infinite number of reasons, but it doesn't mean we're not practicing something. This is the point. And then what am I practicing now, even when I'm not at friends meeting? What am I practicing now, even when Diana's not looking at me? What am I practicing, cultivating, becoming, and being now, right? Even when no eyes are on me, including my own, right? So thank you for that share. It's really very true. We can mistake uh, the the being for then you would X or Y or Z. It doesn't mean they're not helpful. Also, they could be. All right. All of it is actually helpful, even the parts we don't like. So let's see if we can't sit in that quality of being, the one that remembers what we show up here for, or friends meeting, or 10 or 20 or 30 minutes of our practice, the one we're actually practicing every breath, whether you know it or not. And can we wake up to that every moment? A teacher, a teaching, a practice, a being. Shaping not only this moment, but this one. And so we set the heart mind in the right direction, feeding the right wolf, the wolf of kindness, of goodness, of patience, of care, of compassion. And we begin with ourselves here, just like this. And as we sit and allow the body to settle and to still, recollecting all the good throughout all time that is supporting us here and now. And we can begin with the basics, the earth we sit upon, holding us, the air we breathe, the moisture, the warmth, the spaciousness. And these two then are not only those things that support us, they're qualities of our own being. And this breath, like the prayer, transforms the breather. And resting the mind is the training again and again. In that wish, that prayer, that vow, that way of being, fully present just here and now, as we are. And look at the radical act of love that is. Being with myself completely as I am this moment. And we're just going to stabilize the mind and one's attention so we know something about it. How is the body? Knowing this body as it is this moment. Maybe pleasant sensations or unpleasant sensations. Seeing if we can greet them all. Doesn't mean we like them, we don't lie. We just see if we can open a little bit to the truth, this ever changing body. And like that faithful prayer, can we simply open, allow, let be? We're cultivating a certain quality of heart mind right there. No one sensation defines us. It is, in fact, then the qualities with which we greet the experience that we are cultivating. A certain openness, regard, softening. We use the words acceptance and allowing. A kind of friendliness. Can I be gentle and tender with whatever is arising here? Can we invite loving awareness to whatever is arising? I just noticed a little bicep thumping here on the right. I had a big practice, body practice yesterday, and I could simply smile, acknowledging that's from that hard work. I have returned. I'd fallen off for a time. I'm not sure where we were. We had moved from the body to the mind. And seeing if we can recognize, even as we make contact with thoughts, what are we practicing right now? We recognize the thought. And then what's the practice? Can I be open, receptive, curious, allowing? Thought is thought. What am I cultivating? What am I growing? Well, just the recognition of thoughts is skillful. And based on that reality, sometimes we do nothing but let the thought arise and pass. Or we may actually choose a response in the recognition of the thought. Maybe just a friendliness. Everyone has thoughts. With some kind of friendliness, a little self-compassion, non-demanding, non-judgmental. This could be skillful. As well as deciding to change the thought. Rather than continue to think this thought or spin a narrative about the thought, we might choose to come simply back to the body, stabilizing and steadying the mind again. What am I practicing right now? The doing alone is rarely sufficient. The strategies we employ just a part of what we hope is a larger field of wisdom, compassion, kindness, and equanimity. What are we practicing right now? What is nourishing that heartwood? And we can move even then beyond the thinking into the felt sense, the emotion center. What am I cultivating in the way of emotions? Am I cultivating ease, acceptance, flexibility, an essential receptivity, a friendliness? Am I being, even if it's in an undertone, harsh, critical, demanding? What am I practicing right now? And the inquiry is always an invitation. It is never a demand, because just knowing a thought is a thought, according to the teachings, is sufficient. And then we can open beyond the body, the mind, and the heart to include all things arising and passing, including things like sounds, movements. And in this open space, what am I practicing right now? And the simple arrival in the present moment with awareness is good enough. What we practice, we cultivate, and maybe embody, becomes an actual lived embodiment. And from that, we cultivate it, we grow it, we refine it, we shape it towards the good. That cultivation is reflected then in a certain presence, a certain way and quality of being. And this is not static or fixed in any way. It is a continuous becoming, arriving and passing. Sometimes we can, sometimes we can't. It is the aspiration that is valuable. The result is somewhat conditional. And all is well. There's nothing else that we have to do. Be this, sit with this, breathe with this. This is your life. What am I practicing this moment? What am I being? Taking a few final breaths. We're going to prepare to transition from the practice into life, continuing to cultivate these very qualities, this very way of being. And may this practice be of benefit this very day. So be it. I apologize. I got cut off. My charger came out of the computer without my knowing, and then it just died at some point. This is not to say that I still don't need a new computer. But I also heard from Robin in chat that when I switched to the phone that the hearing was much better. And so my computer just came back on. So I will work on that and see if there's not something we can do a little better going forward with that. So just checking in, seeing how we are. I don't even know who's here exactly. So I can't see anyone because I'm on the phone. Any questions or comments about the practice? Carrying the stone as we had, but now inviting, what am I practicing right now? Consistent.
Diana,
Yes,
it's Jim. You can't see me, but I was thinking of all the examples of an effort that doesn't lead to immediate results. And I think one of the best examples is grief, because it can be a very intense practice, but you're not going to get back the loss.
that's right. That's not what you get. What do you suppose you get? There is something. It isn't, we don't recover the being that we've lost. We don't necessarily love that way again, even. I don't even want to say that's true. What would be the benefit of hanging out with loss, grief, mourning, sorrow?
For me, it's a greater awareness of one, impermanence, obviously. That's such a clear fact that you can't argue with it. But the other is that even though you don't get back the entity, you gain a better sense of what you received from that entity and how that stays with you, and perhaps increases who you are.
And the love.
Yeah.
I was just talking with someone about this yesterday, Jim, because the person said, how long does the mourning, the grief continue? And I said something like, well, maybe forever, right? Maybe that's not it changes shape and form and, right, texture and quality. But what can also happen if we can willingly abide is that we can recognize that there is something that is unchanging. And that is at least the care, the love, the regard. And then what I said, surprisingly, is, and weirdly, I think it grows, just like you said. But we have to be willing for that. To get to that, we have to be willing to be with the grief. Because it is our privilege as human beings to recognize loss and to feel for the truth of that. We don't have to deny it. We don't just fluff it off like ducks with water, right? It in some way informs and transforms us also. And as we have more than once said, because of the very impermanence made most precious. And then because of that, made most compassionate. That we get that everyone, no matter who they are, is going to know this part of being human, and then can feel for ourselves and them, and then even that which, or that being that was lost, and then hold us all in it with greater regard, greater love, greater acceptance, greater treasuring those experiences even more because of their ephemeral, temporal nature. And I notice, just like you notice, that the only thing that I have gotten from the willingness to turn towards that is greater love. And for me, sure, it is certainly more unconditional. More, definitely.
Because they're not here to give you anything.
Yeah.
Really, technically. Right?
Yeah. They're not
That's
here. There is
like,
no more exchange that looks like, and then you greeted me at the door, or then you gave me the big hug, or then you were there to protect me. And yet the love not only remains, it grows, and likely out of things like appreciation, gratitude, and the sheer joy of having the privilege of the experience.
grief makes me think that it's the combination of all you feel all the great love you have for someone, but there's also that little wanting that's attached to it that
Yes.
makes the grief, the sadness.
Yes.
We're so sad because we love them so much.
Yes.
We have that attachment of wanting it a particular way.
Yes, we all want it in the pleasant or joyful or right, whatever the way is. And then we get to live it unconditionally, which is also, from my point of view, somewhat of a practice. And I actually have asked myself this question. My father's birthday just came and passed, and I thought, how am I practicing love for him today? How am I practicing love for him today? And guess what? It took me right back to all this. I am him. It's true.
I think if somebody's really lucky, the grief, well, I'll speak for myself. When I'm in a good place, it allows me to enjoy other people and things and experiences, not just, oh,
Yeah,
it was so great knowing that person, having that person in my life. It's this very thing could end at any moment. Let me so appreciate the
yes,
being in front of me, the situation I'm in.
absolutely. And then that becomes more unconditional. Then it isn't just a person or a dog or a father or a son it is the truth of this life, the preciousness of the whole of it. And we get bigger and bigger and bigger, both in our love and in our willingness to offer, share, receive, exchange. It is all true. And I don't know if it can happen without it. I'm not confident yet that we are so skilled or wise that we understand if we had something forever, if we would be able to cultivate that. I don't know. It doesn't seem to be so for me in my own life. It's just another interesting mystery. And What do I do with it now? Well, feel it wholly. I'd say start there. And then also recognize that it is not permanent, even the grief, not just the being. Even
There's a couple
when, yeah,
chats here. So
thank you.
Lynn says, all of that is so true. My sister died almost 5 years ago, and as close as we were, I've never felt closer to her.
That's right.
Sorry.
Isn't that beautiful? It's true. The unconditional love may not be possible while we are in temporal exchange because I want this and you want that, and we, right? And then my dad did, and the sister, and somehow the love is pure now because there's nothing else to get but love. Now, I don't know if that's not the thing, but we're not going to get the hug, the greeted at the door, the lovely moments, and yet we continue. And not only that, we grow it. How impressive of us is this? How exciting. We grow something more, like love beyond form. Oh, wow. Love beyond conditions. Oh, Jean said, love for all beings. Appreciate. Oh, wow. And I haven't noticed the beginning of that for me until I lost someone I loved. I just don't know that I could have cultivated that. And how then do we regard, practice, be that? Be that.
Right.
I
And
love the
then
conversation. Yes.
Robin says the Jewish religion, we're allowed to an entire year to grieve. And
Yes.
I think our society rushes that experience. And it's one of the things I tell people all the time. If, as families leave the hospital, I always say, if somebody tells you, pull up your big girl pants, it's been a year, I tell them, come send them to me and I'll smack them in the face for you.
Yeah.
Because I don't believe it's a year. I don't believe it's life. I believe it's a lifetime.
It's a life. It's a life.
Yeah.
It's a whole life path. And that includes grief and mourning. I've told the story before. We're already over time, so I want to get to our prayer. But the Dalai Lama, when someone asked him, you know, he was crying for an old monk who had killed himself, actually. And the old monk had killed himself because he misunderstood the teaching. And he wanted to come back a more perfect monk. And he realized in his 90s that his abilities were limited. And rather than tolerate the limitation or come to acceptance, he killed himself so he could come back as a new monk and kind of start over, get it better. And the Dalai Lama was in tears, and they said, well, as the Dalai Lama, isn't there just equanimity in this? And he said, of course, what we all know, which is, I hope there is no day where I do not cry for those I have loved and lost. What would it mean? What would it mean of us? I hope there's no day that I do not cry. Right? And so we open to this too, don't we? Don't we? And then you let the voice get shaky. And you let the tears fall, or, whatever is true. You let the heart break a little bit more so that it can open. And this is Bhavana. This is cultivating something valuable, meaningful. And thank you all for being a part of that with me. We're already at 8:34, so I want to say our prayer. We'll continue this on Saturday as we begin reviewing the Noble Eightfold Path. And what are we practicing there? What's the point of that? And how is it helping us? And then we're letting go of all the questions. So that we can be fully present, this body right here, this heart mind as it is, feeling for ourselves and all beings who will know loss and love. And then what are we practicing right now? The willingness to open to it all. And then we gather the hands, holding the preciousness of this human life, all lives, all beings, as we offer this prayer, benefiting, of course, as we said earlier, the one who prays. May I be a guard for those who need protection, a guide for those on the path, a boat, a raft, a bridge for those who wish to cross the flood. May I be a lamp in the darkness, a resting place for the weary, a healing medicine for all who are sick, a vase of plenty, a tree of miracles. And for the boundless multitudes of living beings, may I bring sustenance and awakening, enduring like the earth and the sky, until all beings are freed from sorrow and all are awakened. May we all be happy. May we all be free from pain and sorrow. May we remember with gratitude and joy the truth of this precious human life, accorded to few, and may we offer its blessings all around us. May we rest and dwell in this vast open heart space of compassion, of kindness, of wisdom and equanimity, until all beings are free. And may this practice today be of benefit. May it contribute and may it continue. Thank you for your practice today. So be it. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Carrie, for getting to Al to let me know I had died.
I texted Libby. I texted her, so
Yes.
let's see if Al's awake.
Yes. He was already, he was perfect. That was the perfect guy to check in with on that. I want to make sure I didn't lose anybody for key issues. You're so welcome, everyone. I think, we hold the whole of it, don't we? If we imagine that life is just pleasant, it's dangerous. And we can
delusional.
It is delusional. And we can recognize it all as a benefit, even what is unpleasant. And we're all trying, I know we are, practicing being with the things that are difficult. And consequently, we will be of great benefit. We will, because we'll be holding not only ourselves, but others in it. Even when people go, it doesn't look good to me from here. The truth is we know, because we've already gone there, it's okay. It'll be okay. Doesn't make it easy either, right? You don't lie. You don't lie. I love you all. Thank you all so much.
You just offer your hand to walk with them
That's right.
as much as they would like for you or accept you to be there
As long-
anytime.
That's
Yeah.
right. And it's sometimes a lot less than you have available. It might just be a word or a presence or a lasagna, but it all matters. And so we don't measure it, do we, by amounts or time or, and you know this for yourself, don't you? You know some of the greatest moments didn't have much to do with how long it lasted or how big it was or how much money it cost. And the answer is that's right. And so let's all be that and continue. We're well on our way. Congratulations to us. Be well, everyone, this day. I'll see some of you Thursday at 5:20 in the parking lot. If you're going up to the San Diego, and you will not necessarily be able to sign up if you haven't, because they take down our registration. So then you can just show up because they'll always find a place for us. All right, everyone, be well. Make this day.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.
You too. Be well.